Bonjour et bienvenue sur Ping, un podcast sur le leadership conscient, sur le leadership pour faire face au challenge du 21e siècle. Aujourd'hui, c'est un épisode en anglais. J'ai l'immense plaisir de recevoir Stew Friedman, qui est un professeur à Wharton University et qui vient de sortir un livre qui s'appelle Total Leadership, qui a été traduit en français par Amal Wafaa. Hi Stew, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Greg. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
I'm so happy to have you. The book is amazing. I loved the concept of total leadership. But before entering your concept of total leadership, I have a question. I see a lot of managers and not so many leaders in the business world. I would like to understand, what is a leader to you?
That's such an important distinction, and it has been made, in the writings about leadership and management in the last few decades. I think the important distinction for what leaders do is they have a vision for a better tomorrow. What does the world look like that is better than today? And they have the passion and commitment to bring others along with them to that better tomorrow. So a leader is someone who mobilizes people and resources toward a valued goal, toward a vision, a compelling image of what tomorrow might look like, an achievable future that is better than today. And that is not the same as what a manager does, which has more to do with the very important essential aspects of getting things done. But leadership has as its essential quality an inspiring vision that motivates people to want to produce extraordinary effort to achieve something that matters.
Would you agree that in the 21st century, we need more leaders than managers? Or at least at the top, at the CEO position? I mean, we need a lot of managers, obviously, in businesses, but...
Well, they're both necessary. And my belief, and what we've been teaching at the Wharton School since I started the leadership program there in 1991, is the idea that everyone has the capacity to grow as a leader at any stage of your life and in any role in an organization. So I prefer to think of leadership as a quality, as a set of attributes that anyone can cultivate in their own way, in their own style. Because all of us are capable of acting with greater authenticity and clarifying what's most important to us, our values, our vision. And each of us has an idea about what is important and where we want to go with our lives. All of us can grow in our capacity to be whole, to recognize all the different parts of our lives, not just at work, and to understand and appreciate and embrace the different people in our lives and the different roles that we play. And we're all capable of improving our capacity to innovate, to get things done in new ways that serve our own interests as well as the people around us, and to continually experiment by innovating with how we get things done as leaders in all the different parts of our lives. So when I ask this question, Greg, of audiences around the world, and I do this as a regular part of my workshops and talks, I ask, what kind of leadership do we need now? Mm-hmm. What does leadership mean to you now in your world? And the kinds of things that I hear, the most common response is adaptive, responsive to change. There are many other words that people use to describe what's needed now. Empathy, inspiration, compassion, courage. These are the words that, if we were to do a word cloud of all the responses that I have to that question, those are the prominent ones. But adaptive is probably the biggest word, because the world is so complex and so rapidly changing that as a leader, you have to be someone who is learning all the time, and to be curious and open to hearing and seeing the reality as it is changing around you and be able to adjust to that reality in light of what you know is most important to you and to your people.
And this is a tremendous change compared to when you started the program at Wharton, I guess, because in the 80s, everything was kind of settled. And I think, I mean, I don't know exactly the date, but I guess we can all agree that 2001 was a decisive year and a lot of things changed, not because of the 21st century, but because of the attack on the tower, I guess. And since then, the world has become very unclear, very complicated, more complicated. And so what we need as a leader has changed tremendously from the 20th to the 21st century because of that. Not because it's just 21st century per se, but really because the world has changed a lot and is changing very much and very fast.
Yes, and of course, the digital age has had a profound impact on how we lead and how we think about leadership from the point of view of the whole person, which is what total leadership is all about. It was created. I had been doing research and teaching and practice and consulting throughout the 80s on how companies grow leadership talent. That was my main research area. And I was doing consulting with companies on their succession planning systems and how they raise up talent in their organizations and select them for high-level positions. When my first son was born in the late 80s, I pivoted to a different focus that was now in parallel with how we grow leadership capacity in our companies, in our business schools, wherever, to also looking at how do we integrate the different parts of our lives so that we can find value in all the different parts of our lives that matter to us, not just at work, but also at home and in the community and for ourselves personally. So we began doing research in the field to find out who is good at this. Who knows how to do this? What do they do that makes them effective at having impact as leaders at work and at home and in the community and for themselves in a way that creates a bit more harmony and less conflict among those different parts? And we developed a set of practice principles from that research, which then led to, in the late 90s, I was asked by the CEO of Ford Motor Company to join the company on a temporary basis to help revolutionize the leadership development practice for the company on a global basis. And I did that. My wife and I took our 3 children back to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we had been graduate students in the early 80s. And now I was a senior executive, head of leadership development for Ford. And it was there that we created a program that was about leadership from the point of view of the whole person, where we used what we had been learning, and I had been writing about in articles and books about how people integrate the different parts of their lives to lead with greater impact in all of them. We use those principles to create a systematic approach for how to do this. And that's where the total leadership model was created. And it was appropriate for the company at that time because we were trying as a company in very many different ways to take more of an outside-in view of who we were rather than to assume we knew everything and manage from the perspective of top-down a leadership approach. So this was a way to help the company be more responsive to its environment. And starting with individual leaders and their families and their communities and themselves.
And what you're saying also, somehow, we're going to obviously talk about total leadership. This is the whole concept you've been developing, but it's very much connected to balance of life, would you say? Like having those total and this four ways to win, like that you've just mentioned. Maybe you want to explain a bit more.
Yes.
What does those 4 ways to actually be a good leader. I was discussing with a CEO very lately of La Poste. It's the French Post basically. So it's a huge company, and he's doing a lot of sport. And I was surprised because a lot of people telling me, "Oh, I don't really have time to train." And he's the CEO of a company doing 33 billions euros per year, and he is training. Maybe not every day, but many times a week.
Well, to get back to your earlier question about what has changed in these, I'm going to address both of these issues, or I will try to, because they're both essential. In the last 25 years, or so, in this new millennium, this new century, we have seen greatly increased interest in an approach to leadership that is about the whole person. Partly that's because of the digital revolution and how, the modes through which we communicate and connect with each other and our work and the rest of the world have radically changed. And that requires a new understanding of what our boundaries are in terms of how we can focus on different things and people at different times, and to be present, but to be able to fit the different pieces together in a way that works. The fragility of our planet, the greater polarization and conflict among peoples within countries and across nations. There's a much greater sense of urgency that especially young people, but I have seen this in leaders at all levels and ages, a greater interest in an appreciation for who you are as a person, not just as a business person. Mm-hmm. That's the big shift. And so your example of someone in a CEO role taking care of themselves or having fun doing sport, this is now quite common. Back in the early days, you asked, when I first started teaching at the Wharton School in 1984, it was all about business and only business, and that's all you could really talk about. But now, and when I first started talking about work and life and the whole person and started writing about that, there were many people who were saying, like, what are you doing? Nobody cares about your children, professor. Like, why are you talking about that? This is not a child care center. This is not a social welfare organization. This is a business school. What are you doing? Well, there were many, many people who thought, wait, this is a good thing for us to be addressing. And especially as women were ascending to positions of power in society, and especially in the business world, it became a much more pressing issue for men and women to see, how are we going to recreate ourselves, our roles in our homes and families, as well as in society, as well as in the business world, that enables us to be free, to be the people we want to be, and to take care of ourselves and our people so that we can be healthy and strong to be able to deal with the new pressures that are so great in any sort of business role. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your family and be a contributor to your community in order to be effective as a leader. And the really good news here, and this is, I think, one of the important insights of the total leadership approach, is that when you think systematically or mindfully or consciously, intentionally, creatively about what's important to you, so that there are three principles that we teach based on what we learned from the early research: to be real, to be whole, to be innovative. To be real is to know what matters most to you, your values, your vision. To be whole, to recognize that you have a life beyond work that also has people that matter to you in your home or family, in your community, and of course yourself. And then to be innovative is to be continually experimenting with new ways of getting done that create value for your work, your home, your community, and for yourself. The key word there being and, not or. So you talk about balance. I'm sorry, you were about to say something more.
No. Go for it.
Well,
I'm listening to you.
on the question of balance, most people think of work and life as the scales in balance. Now, Let me illustrate. This is the classic model. Let's say this is my work and this is everything else. So now I'm getting more power, more resources, more authority, more recognition. This is great, isn't it? What's wrong with this picture, Greg?
I don't see your other hand.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
That's the issue. So when you think in terms of balance, you think trade-off. Mm-hmm. And of course, trade-offs are necessary. There's no one has it all at once, certainly. Balance doesn't exist.
I agree.
And I think it's the wrong metaphor. The metaphor that I prefer to use in thinking about the main four aspects of life or domains of life: work, home, community, and self, which is your mind, your body, your spirit, is of the jazz quartet. In a jazz quartet, as all of you jazz fans know, you have a theme, you have an idea, and it's about creating something beautiful, a sound that is beautiful and that is inspired. And you have four different instruments or players who understand the motif, the idea, but they are constantly evolving and adjusting and listening to and learning from and being inspired by the movements of the other pieces. They're not in isolation. And so there's improvisation over time, over the span of a life, a piece of music, where sometimes the trumpet is resting. That's a technical term in music, rest. Or sometimes the drums are not playing. Sometimes only you hear the piano. Sometimes it's only the bass. Mostly you're hearing all four instruments, but there are times for rest, there are times for play, there are times for collaboration and innovation along the way. And so when you think in those terms, when you think what matters most to me, and this is what we help people to learn about through the tools that we have developed to evoke your core values and your vision. And it's something everyone can do, and most people really enjoy doing it. Articulating what matters most to them through some simple tools that we have developed. Like, for example, the critical episodes in your life history. What has happened to you? The 3 or 4 most important events in your history that have shaped your values and beliefs. And other models, use this kind of approach as well. Tell those stories that you're willing to share that have determined who you are, who you've become.
Actually,
so it begins there, and there's a longer story, but let me pause here.
No, but
I've been
it's
saying
totally
too
okay.
much.
It's super interesting because I gave a TED talk 2-3 years ago, and I say also balance doesn't exist, and I talk about harmony, and so
that's the word.
It resonates very much with what
thinking the same way.
Exactly, we're thinking the same way, so that's great. I just wanted to focus on being true, being well, and being innovative. One of the CEO told me, big company also, like 22 billion euros turnover a year, and he said, you cannot achieve that by yourself. It's impossible to actually know your value or your drive or your sense of purpose as a person if you just focus on yourself and just not just focus on yourself, but if you just think by yourself. You need someone else, at least,
of course,
to think about that. And I would like you to explain, because you said that you've developed some practices to help people, because if you ask people, oh, you need to be true, well, and innovative, they believe, yeah, sure, I am somehow. They will feel that there,
of course.
And actually they're not. And I would
Most of us are not.
Yeah, I would like to deep dive a little bit on this.
Okay. Well, first of all, I agree entirely with what your guest and friend was speaking about. No one gets there on their own. Everyone has help. You might not know it, you might not see it, but it's there. I would bet a lot of money You show me anyone who has achieved a life of significance. They have had help. And in terms of how you learn to grow as a leader in your life, I have found that it is necessary to do so with others who are committed to the same project. And so all the work that we do in our Total Leadership company, when we deliver this content to companies and to individuals around the world, the book is in many different languages, and we have operations now in France as well as in Spain and Italy and throughout the US. It always involves peer-to-peer coaching. Mm-hmm. So, for example, where we began with to be true or to be real, it starts with the evolution of your values. Where did they come from? Well, choose those 3 or 4 stories that are essential to your growth, your development as a leader in terms of your values. Write those stories, share them with a couple of other people in a private, protected space, online or wherever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now get comments from them. And you do the same for them. So we do this, ideally, trios, 3 people. So if it was you, me, and a friend, I would write the story of the evolution of my core values in the 3 or 4 critical episodes of my life history that shaped my values and beliefs. You would do the same, and so would our friend. And we would all read each other's content, and then we would get together and talk about it. And when you have to share it with other people, and of course, when you have to listen to someone else and help them by expressing your curiosity about the things that they are writing about, you have both accountability to get past the point that you were speaking about just a moment ago. Well, I already know all this stuff. Well, you don't. Everyone has a way to go to improve. And when you're in a peer-to-peer coaching environment, the magic is that you have both accountability, but you also learn through the things that you hear from other people about yourself, if you're paying attention. So we help people to be effective as a peer-to-peer coach and client. And the work we do, especially if we have an extended time period, travels over time, where the coaching exchanges really help each member to become more intelligent, more aware, and more effective. Does that address your question about how you can't do it alone?
Yes, this is about being true. Then there's being whole. And
yes.
For being whole, it's different, because then it's like, I guess, it's also very connected to the value, because if family, for example, is an important value to you, then how much time do you spend with your children? How much time you spend with your children without your phone?
Well, one of the core exercises in there are the 3 main principles. To be real is to act with authenticity by clarifying what's most important to you. One of the exercises is this critical values piece. Another is your leadership vision. Describe the perfect day 15 years from now. What happens on that day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? What are you doing? Who are you with? What is the impact you're having on those people, on the world? And to write that out in just a page, and to be able to tell that story out loud to other people, your story of the future, is a very powerful and simple means for articulating what you care about. So it's all about being able to express to other people in a way that they can relate to what matters most to you. Another exercise is what we call the 4-way view, where you take these 4 different domains of work, home, community, and self, whatever those mean to you. Your definition of family is different than mine, probably.
Totally.
And your community, friends, social groups, religious, political groups, neighbors, very different than mine. Everyone has their own story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. what your self-domain means to you in terms of your physical health, mental health, intellectual growth, spiritual development. Those are all individual. But you have something. And of course, then there's your work or your career. We ask people to take the four-way view and to say, first, if you were to have 100 points and to allocate them to those four domains in terms of what you care about most, what you value most, how would you divide those 100 points up? And then think about a typical week or a typical month. Where is your mind? The focus of your attention, perhaps your most precious asset as a leader. Where is your mind during that time when you're awake? Work, home, community, and self, another 100 points. And then we ask people, the third column on this simple chart, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your well-being or sense of satisfaction at work, at home, in the community, and for yourself? Subjective sense of how you feel. And finally, we ask people to think about how well they're performing in each role, in meeting the needs and expectations of the most important people in each domain. So that's another tool we use to help people to see how the focus of their attention affects their well-being and their performance in each domain. And when they have a conversation with their peer coaches about that, they develop new insights about ideas for innovation. And also what new information they have to gather from their important people, their key stakeholders at work, at home, and in the community to find out what those people really think. Not what you think they think, but what they really think about how you're doing and what you can do to make things better for them and them for you. So, yes, these assessment tools bring to light ideas for innovation and also challenges in what it is going to take to make real, to execute on ideas for innovation that will work for you and for them. So, yes, it's very much a matter of exploring and becoming more conscious of what's important to you and how things are going in each of the different domains of your life before you take action.
I was going to ask, what is success to you? Because then what you're describing is, because we tend, probably most people won't agree. I tend to say our society has defined success as accumulation of wealth, fame, power, something. When I say that, most people say, yeah, well, I know it's not that, right? But still, this is our culture. I believe this is our culture. Maybe you won't agree with me. Actually, I'm interested in your point of view. But then what you're describing is, there are four ways to win. And so what is success for you? What does it mean to be rich somehow?
Yes, the subtitle of the book is Be a Better Leader, Have a Richer Life.
Yes, that's why I'm asking.
I thought you might have been. The promise here is to be more deliberate, more intentional, more mindful and conscious of choosing the life that matters to you. So, yes, I agree that the prevailing norms in most of Western society, especially in the United States, but also true in Western Europe and
Sure.
Northern Europe, tend to be towards material gain. But when you ask people to dive into where they've come from, what they want the world to look like, and then to help them identify the most important people in their lives at work and at home and in the community. And then, and this is the heart of the book and the program, to talk to those people, to have real dialogue with 6, 8, 10 of those people in the different domains, and to have a conversation that evokes for both parties what you really need from each other. So I might say to you, Greg, you're one of my most important people in my work world. And I want to talk with you about how we can better understand what we need from each other and how we can strengthen our alliance. Would you be willing to do that? And almost everyone you ask of that will want to do it. They will feel good to know that you matter, that they matter to you. And then you say to them, okay, I've given some thought to this, and here's what I think is most important to you. Do I have it right? And if you do the exercises that we ask you to do in this program and in the book, you will have thought through, here are the 3 or 4 most important things to Greg. I would have thought about that. And here's what I need from him. And so I might share that with you. Greg, here are the 4 things that I think are most important to you. Am I right? What am I missing? Note that I am open, curious, wanting to know from you what I am missing. And you tell me, yes, this is great. I'm so glad we're talking about this, Stu. You matter to me too. Let's keep going. These 2 things, very important. The 3rd and 4th things you mentioned, not so much. Really, I say, tell me more, Greg. And you tell me more about why these matter and these don't. And while I'm so curious and open and inquisitive and inquiring, you say to me, there's something else that you didn't mention that I'd like to tell you about, which you do because you can see that I'm open, inquiring, and part of the practice here, part of the training, is to learn how to ask questions that evoke the truth from your people. So I make it easy for you to tell me things that might be uncomfortable. And you tell me this other thing that I didn't even know about. I just ignored. I was blind to it. So I went into that conversation with these 4 things on my mind about you. And I come out with these 2 that I now know are, yes, very important, and a new issue. So I come out of that conversation with fewer things to worry about and more focus on the things that you really care about. And we do that in a concentrated period of time with 6, 8, 10 people. And you realize, wow, I need to have more of these conversations because that gives me a better sense of the reality that I'm dealing with and makes me smarter about what changes I can make to be truly successful and have the rich life I want to live. So when you ask about defining success, what people discover from those conversations, especially with family, is that, money isn't everything. and especially if they talk to senior people in their lives. And of course, there's been a lot of research on this, and it's what most of the world's religions try to teach us. When you're dying, you don't think about how much money you have. No. You think about your family. You think about your children. You think about your brothers and sisters, your parents, the people that you've affected that have touched you, your relationships. Leadership is about relationships. And so when people share their leadership visions, here's what a day looks like 15 years from now. If it's all about how big your house is, how good the schools are that your children are going to, how many cars and boats you have, nobody cares about that, really. Mm-hmm. What they want to know is, what are you doing with your precious life to make the world a little bit better, using whatever talent and privilege and opportunity you have? So when people go through this process, they discover, they become more open to seeing other ways of defining what a successful life really looks like, despite, as you say, and I agree, the bias toward material gain and accumulation. When we say someone is successful, we mean they're rich. Well, really? Now, I'm not promoting social welfare here. What I'm saying and what our evidence shows is that you can have more of what matters to you in your life and be successful in a traditional material sense if you're smart about it. So your friend who's a sporting advocate and spends his time as a CEO preparing for races or whatever, I'm willing to bet that he's a more effective CEO because he's a sporting person. It helps him to perform, even if he has to take time away. And that is one of the big insights we have from our work. When people experiment with new ways of getting things done, the most common kind of experiment is that people do things like sport or meditation or reading or going for a walk with their children around the neighborhood. And this helps them to be better in performing at work. So when we first started this at Ford Motor Company, we said total leadership, improving performance and results at work and at home and in the community and for yourself. And this was an invitation, especially for men, to say leadership, performance, results at work. Oh, okay, I can do that. There's no shame in that for a man to do that. You know, this is in the year 2000, 1999, 2000. It's different now. But we also required them to look at these other parts of their lives in ways that I've described here. And they became more open to seeing the interconnections among the different parts. And that's what your friend demonstrates. In one simple way. And of course, everyone has opportunity to do that. Once you start to look for how by being a better father am I a better businessman? How by taking care of my body do I become a stronger member of my family, of my community, and of my business? How by being more engaged in the community am I a more effective leader in my work life? And how does that help me with my family? So you start to ask these questions about the different domains and how they affect each other. And that changes how you think about what success looks like.
I was wondering, from your experiences, because you have, as everyone understands, a lot, in which area people are struggling the most? Which of the four?
Yeah. Family. Yeah, I think that's where the relationship, men and women.
Okay.
That's where the relationships are most deeply felt, and in some ways the hardest to grapple with, and where we see the most sort of profound impact, and especially as we help people, men and women, to see that who they are in their family lives really has an impact on who they are in their career. But we also see a lot of struggle with self. And in fact, the most significant changes are in the domain of self. So when we ask people in taking the four-way view, where do you focus your attention? And how satisfied are you? Your sense of well-being at work, at home, and in the community, and for yourself. Self is usually rated lowest in terms of satisfaction, but the gain is greatest there. In part because it's rated so low, so the gain is easier to make,
Sure.
But also because when you take care of yourself in ways that promise to have a positive impact on the other parts of your life, you just feel so much better and more focused on the things that matter. And so the changes that we see, and we've studied this carefully and written about it, is that people shift their attention a little bit away from work as a result of doing these exercises with peers, where they're they have these dialogues with stakeholders in the different domains, and then they experiment with new ways of getting things done. And they have a game plan and a scorecard to measure impact and results at work, at home, in the community, and for themselves. And what we see is they shift their attention away from work to the other domains of their lives, and they meet or exceed the expectations of people at work better, despite the fact that they're spending less of their attention on work, which seems like a paradox until you see the benefits, the cross-domain benefits of taking care of the other parts in ways that benefit your work.
Actually, I have an example of that with the former CEO of Best Buy, Hubert Joly. He's a French guy that I also received on the podcast. and he was telling me, coming back to what you were saying about the collaborator, he was spending, I think, half a day every quarter with every single person that was connected to him to better understand how they can work better together. It was not on a specific topic. It was really about understanding how we can work better together. And also what I've seen discussing with him is this very deep dive he did within himself to become a better leader. And as you probably know, he successfully did that at Best Buy. I also wanted to take an example from your book, maybe Jenna Porter, because it changed completely her life. It has a profound transformation on her life. Or maybe you want to take another example.
Well, I think what you're getting at is really at the heart of what it means to grow as a leader in your life, which requires some investment. I like to draw the analogy to professional sports or performing arts like dance or theater or singing or music. And you think about how much is required to become an excellent athlete or performer of music, and how much time and energy and attention people invest in their growth, in their practice, relative to their performance. Just think of that simple analogy. If you think about a professional football player, and here I mean real football, soccer, how much time does Kylian Mbappe spend on the practice pitch relative to the amount of time he spends performing?
Nothing. It's a huge amount of training.
It's 10 to 1.
Yeah, at least.
And do you think about that from the business professional? It's the opposite. So you have to invest in your growth, and of course it starts with looking at yourself. And I know you know this from your own work. The core, the beginning is to be real. Who am I? What's my purpose? Where have I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? And that's often, to your point about which domain do people struggle with most. I mentioned family because those are the obvious flashpoints of tension and disappointment that you have to somehow come to terms with, as well as the love and support and what all that means to you. But the hardest part, I think, is in honestly addressing who you are. And I see this whole project as one way to gain greater liberation or freedom to become the person you are. And when I speak to people, with alumni, people from 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, what I hear most is I found some ways to be more myself and to overcome the fears I had in doing that and the inhibitions, the guilt in becoming who I wanted to be, because I learned that if I was more open about what I stand for, my values, my vision, what I'm trying to achieve, and I took the leadership leap to see the world from the point of view of other people and how what I could do was going to be helping them, that made me feel stronger and more confident in being able to take the necessary steps to try to make change happen. And it's not easy. And there are failures along the way, but it's all about discovery and continuing to innovate in how you get things done, doing things in new ways, where you work, when you work, how that fits with the rest of your life, so that you're doing it for your people as well as for yourself. That's the leadership mindset. What's my vision of a better world? How do I bring people with me? And that, of course, starts with looking inside, where I think it is the scariest place to look is inside your own heart, your own head, and then to figure out, all right, how am I going to be true to that? And of course, you have to bring other people along with you. And that's what Jenna Porter, in the example in the book, was able to do. as well as all of our clients and students. That's the essential goal.
So how transformative it was in a life, for example, or do you have an example of someone who did that work, and can you explain the before and after for that person?
Yes, I mean, now literally hundreds of thousands of such examples. So it's hard to pinpoint one. Well, I can recall one person who was a lawyer in the East Coast. He also was interested in professional tennis. He was like a good tennis player, high-level tennis player. And as a result of his exploring who he was, where he came from, what he wanted his life to look like in the future, he, during the course of our 4 months together, figured out how to move to California and to start a tennis academy with his father, who had been living in New York State, and that was a radical shift for him. That was a long time ago. He's long since done other things, but that's just one that comes to mind as a pretty big one. People have started new businesses, they've quit their jobs, or they've changed their roles, but mostly what I hear is changes in how people feel more connected to the people who matter to them, and they feel supported in becoming, choosing the careers that matter most to them. So there are often changes in how people work, or in the new jobs. They will. There's another example of a physician who was in one of our high potential programs here at the hospital network in Philadelphia. And she realized that she had higher aspirations that she could only achieve at another health system. And so she left. This is somebody who we were trying to hold on to, but she left because she knew it was going to be better for her there. And it turns out that was a good move for her, and opened up other possibilities for other people here. But it also became a much more fulfilling experience for her family. So these are just small examples off the top of my head. There, the things that I think move me the most are when people say that I feel more like I am myself. I feel like I'm doing what I should be doing. Some of them start up new companies, or there was one couple who did this together. The most recent book is called Parents Who Lead. So we created a workshop for people raising children together. Wow. And so they went through these exercises as a family. And one couple, they have a child who has a rare disease. And the mom, who never mentioned this to her employer, she was afraid to bring it up. But one of their experiments that they did together, the parents, was to be out about, to say what they were dealing with and what they'd been learning and the help that they needed. And they started a foundation to raise funds to search for a cure for this rare disease that one of their children has. And when her boss saw that she was doing this, her boss and other people in the company saw that her leadership capacity, like here she is selling this new, research program, and she had to be much more assertive about that, and to present with passion her, inspiring vision of what she was trying to achieve. It actually led to her being promoted within the company because of these new aspects of herself that were on display. So there's lots of other examples like that I describe in the book, and in the Parents Who Lead book, which is another window on child development and how we lead in our families.
One question that I have also is, I don't know if you've seen this study from Gallup around collaborator engagement, how happy the employees are. And I was wondering, how do you feel this concept of total leadership can help improve the happiness? I don't know about happiness because, but satisfaction. I think satisfaction is better of employees.
We were just meeting our total leadership company. We have a Europe group where we have Wafaa and Manu in France, and we also have colleagues in Spain and in Italy. And in our meeting this morning, we were talking about a project we did with Aegon, which is an insurer from, I think, based in the Netherlands, where we did a series of workshops with many of their people a few years ago. And Carlos Casanueva, who leads the project in Spain, was the lead on this intervention with Aegon. He was meeting with their CEO earlier today, who said that their engagement, they measure engagement, and it means a lot to them in their company, in their country. They have to report on these engagement scores. In 2020, if I have this right, the scores were in the 30 or 40% range, very low. And now, according to the CEO, as I heard it, and he attributes the work that we were doing in helping people to feel more whole and more engaged in their work, the scores doubled. They went into the 80s as a result of this intervention. So we have some evidence, and there are other case studies too that people can read about at our website, which is totalleadership.org, that show on an enterprise level how when you have everyone looking and talking about what's important, where are we going, connecting meaningfully through dialogue, and then inventing, everyone's experimenting with new ways of getting things done that are good for us and for their lives, people feel like they are being cared for. That was the big shift at Ford when we first started this, where we were saying to people, okay, you have to now do some experiments that are going to be good for Ford Motor Company in a measurable way. And we measured the dollars, tens of millions of dollars in cost savings, cost avoidance, productivity improvements from these experiments people were doing. But it also has to demonstrate positive impact for your family and your community and for you. and the people these were high potentials from all around the world, from Japan, from France, from everywhere. They said, what? You want us to do what? Yes, we want you to make change happen that's good for our company and for your life. And that was a shock, but it was like a big party. It was like a fiesta. We had so much fun doing that because it tells people we care about you. And the only way we're going to be successful as a company if you are a human being here.
Actually, I really believe also Uber Jolie told me that we tend in executive committee to focus on finance, but finance is a consequence of business, which is a consequence of human. So you should do the opposite. Like you should concentrate on human. That will create business, which will create finance, not the other way around. And that is very simple, very logic. And yet, when you go to any executive committee, they will first talk about finance. And maybe if they have time, they'll talk about humans. Or if there's any issues, they'll talk about humans.
Right. No, to change that is a long, slow process. And it's not going to happen everywhere. That's for sure. And there's much resistance. There's much resistance because this is a long-term project and it's difficult and it's not normative. It's not what we learned growing up. But more and more people want to take this approach. And I think, back to where we started, Greg, with your question about what's changed in this century. There's a lot of pain in the world, and people are more aware of it now, of where they are in the world. I think largely because of the digital revolution and the access to information that everyone has. And about global conflicts, about war, about famine, about the burning of our home. There's a lot of fear, a lot of pain, and people are feeling a greater need for connection and support and meaningful contribution to trying to make the world better, to heal the world, especially young people. And so that's why this model, I think, is more, it's more needed today than it was when we first created it 25 years ago.
100%. Thank you so much too for your insights. So and your enthusiasm also. It's refreshing. So nice to hear from you. So thank you so much for everything. That was a beautiful conversations.
Well, Craig, I really appreciate your interest and your allowing me to just talk.
I love that.
Well, I feel passionately about this work because I see the need for it and I see the results that we've had, and it's very gratifying to be in a position to be able to bring, an approach to leadership that really helps people to make a positive contribution to their own lives as well as to the people around them. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak about it, and I thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. I hope you enjoy, as I did, the conversations. And I see you in another episode in 15 days.